There's a specific kind of pain that doesn't shout. It just sits there. Like a chair left empty at the table, like your name missing from a group text, like laughter you hear through a door you're not supposed to open. And when it comes from your own family, it doesn't just hurt. It rearranges the way you breathe. Tonight's story isn't here to make us clap when someone gets what they deserve, and it's not here to hand out verdicts. I'm asking us to walk into it with a little quiet and a little honesty. Because sometimes the loss that feels like the end is actually a door closing so a different life can finally begin. He said, "I can't wait for the ceremony tomorrow." His aunt went still, slid a photo album across the table and whispered, "It was last week." In the pictures, everyone was smiling. He wasn't there. And when he confronted them, his brother and parents laughed. "Didn't we tell you?" A month later, they called him panicked about the renovation money he'd been quietly paying, and he only had one question back. "Stay with me. You'll feel why." My name is Blaze, and I'm about to share something that still stings to say out loud. But before I do, can you drop a simple hi in the comments, or tell me where you're listening from? Sometimes just knowing someone is here makes the truth easier to carry. Thank you. And if you don't want to miss the rest of what happened, how one lie turned into a paper trail, and how I finally chose myself, subscribe and stay with me. Because for a long time I felt invisible in my own family. And I know I'm not the only one. You learn to stop expecting things after a while. After the third birthday, they forget. After the fifth Thanksgiving you hear about through a coworker's Instagram story. After the seventh Sunday dinner no one mentions, you tell yourself it's fine, you've got your own life now, your own place, your own routine. And honestly, you've always been the quiet one, the responsible one, the one who doesn't need anything. Maybe that's why they forget. Or maybe that's just what you tell yourself to stop the ache from settling too deep. But it never really stops. That small hope never dies. That belief that if you're good enough, quiet enough, useful enough, stable enough, eventually they'll remember you. Eventually you'll matter enough to be included. Last year I turned 30. My mom sent a single text that just said HBD, no call, no how are you doing Blaze. Just 3 letters. I stared at it longer than I should have. Then I put my phone down and told myself she probably had a lot going on. At work, I'm the guy people call when campaigns are burning down. I'm the fixer, the one who can shave 40% off a budget and still get conversions to spike. Reese, my teammate, had a presentation collapse that morning and came running to my desk. "Blaze, I need a miracle." She half joked, but her eyes were serious. 20 minutes later, the deck was cleaned, the data reframed, and she walked out with a win. I sat back sipping lukewarm coffee and wondered why people who barely know me trust me more than people who raised me. No one in my family knows I own the LLC that pays for all the maintenance on the beach cottage in Isle of Palms. Leaky roof, I paid the contractor. Broken deck boards, I handled it. They think it's some family trust. They never asked and I never told. Not because I'm afraid they'll ask for more, but because I once believed that if they truly cared, they would have asked already. The only one who ever cuts through the noise is my Aunt Maribel. She called me out of the blue last week, no agenda, no small talk. Just asked Blaze, "Do you ever feel lonely?" I laughed it off, deflected like I always do. She didn't push. She just said some families keep peace by making one person disappear. That line sat with me for days. Then today I came home to a thick envelope on my kitchen counter. It was high-quality off-white with gold accents, my full name printed clean and centered. It looked like something out of a movie. I opened it, hands trembling, before I even understood why. Inside was an invitation. Griffin Kerrigan and Harper Wren request the honor of your presence. My breath caught. For a second, everything tilted. It felt like proof that I still existed. I flipped it over. The wedding was this Saturday. I'd gotten it on a Thursday. Late, sure, but maybe that's just how things are with family. Maybe they were just busy. Maybe it didn't mean anything. I RSVP'd immediately through the wedding website. There was a message in faint gray, event details updated recently. And the calendar widget seemed off. It showed a past date briefly before auto-refreshing. I blamed my browser. I didn't want to think too hard. I was finally invited. That was all that mattered. I started planning right away. booked a haircut, dug out my best suit. I even went shopping for a new pocket square, something understated but stylish. I told myself I'd be on my best behavior, no brooding, no awkward silences, no asking for anything. I would show up as the version of me they could finally be proud of. I texted Aunt Maribel, "You won't believe it. Griffin's wedding is this weekend and I'm going." Her reply took longer than usual. When it finally came, it was just one line. "Oh, is it?" The chill that ran down my spine didn't make sense at the time. I shook it off. I was too busy trying to believe this time would be different. The next morning I woke up early. I'd barely slept, but I didn't feel tired. I felt wired, like every part of me was on alert. I ironed my shirt twice, even though it didn't need it, adjusted the cuffs on my jacket until they sat perfectly. I stood in front of the mirror and rehearsed a smile that said, "I'm happy to be here, not please don't forget me again." I'd picked out a wedding gift that took me a week to find, an antique brass compass engraved on the back with, "Wherever you go, may you always know your way back." It wasn't flashy, but it meant something. I wrote a note to go with it, wishing you both a life of direction, not perfection. No mentions of childhood, no guilt, no passive-aggressive sentiment, just grace. Because maybe if I gave it, they'd reflect it back. I booked a hotel near Charleston only to find everything was full for Saturday. I assumed it was tourist season. Then a confirmation email from the wedding website pinged my inbox. Subject line: "Thank you for attending the Ren Kerrigan wedding." I stared at it for a beat too long, then laughed it off. Probably a glitch. I texted Griffin. "What time should I get there on Saturday?" The message was marked as read in seconds. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Finally, he responded, "Just be on time. No emoji, no warmth, no address." I read it twice. My thumb hovered over the screen, thinking of asking for more detail, but I stopped. I didn't want to come off as needy. At the office, Reese pulled me into a last-minute meeting. A vendor had dropped the ball and she needed backup. I handled it like always. She looked at me afterward and said, "You ever think you're too good for this place?" I smiled and shook my head. But in my chest, something tightened. I was good enough to save campaigns. Why did I still feel like a burden at home? Later that afternoon, I told Aunt Maribel I'd be driving down through Beaufort and asked if I could swing by before heading to Charleston. She hesitated. "Of course, honey," she said, but her voice caught. Then she changed the subject, asked about traffic, about gas prices. I didn't catch it then. I was too busy floating on the hope of being seen. I loaded the car that evening. My suit hung neatly behind the passenger seat. The compass was wrapped in tissue and tucked in a box tied with navy ribbon. I told myself I was ready. I told myself everything would be fine. By the time I reached her house, the sun was low and golden over the marsh. Maribel opened the door with a strange smile, like she was bracing for something. I stepped inside, hugged her. Her arms were stiff. On the coffee table sat a photo album. It was open. The pictures were new, fresh ink, glossy finish. I could see a blur of white lace champagne flutes, someone in a tux. I didn't want to look. So I cleared my throat, gave her the biggest smile I could fake, and said, "Can you believe it? Griffin's wedding is tomorrow." Maribel flinched, then silence. I remember the way I smiled when I said it, like a boy who'd just been handed a golden ticket after years of standing in line. "The wedding's tomorrow, can you believe it?" I said it out loud right there in my Aunt Maribel's kitchen, still smelling of sweet tea and lemon-scented disinfectant. I was trying to sound casual, but I could feel the tremble in my voice, could feel how badly I wanted her to be proud of me for showing up, for making the effort, for being wanted. I started unpacking the details one by one, like I had rehearsed it all in my head during the drive from Charlotte to Beaufort. The suit I'd had tailored just right. The watch I'd polished. The monogrammed gift I'd picked for Griffin and Harper. A custom glass sculpture shaped like the coastline where they first met, engraved with their initials and wedding date. I even brought it out of the box to show her. "They're gonna love it," I said. I wanted it to feel personal, like something that says I see them, that I care. She just stood there, her hands gripping the back of a kitchen chair like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. When I paused, expecting some kind of smile or maybe even a "good job, sweetheart," she said nothing. Her silence sliced right through the warmth of the room. And then she said it. It was last week, Blaze. I blinked. What? She didn't say it again. She didn't need to. She just walked over to the living room and picked up a heavy leather-bound album sitting too neatly on the coffee table. Like it had been waiting for me. Like it had already decided to ruin me. She placed it in front of me. I sat down slowly, my fingertips grazing the first page before I even understood what I was doing. A full spread shot of Griffin and Harper under a floral arch, sunlight pouring over them like something out of a movie. Her in white lace, him in a fitted navy tux. The caption underneath said Charleston last Saturday. I kept flipping. Group shots with family members, Uncle Mason and Aunt Carla laughing at the head table. Cousins I hadn't seen in years standing in coordinated pastel. A wide-angle photo of my parents walking Harper down the beach, everyone barefoot, carefree, complete. Complete without me. I scanned every image like a man drowning looking for shore. In some cruel, desperate part of my mind, I thought maybe I'd missed it. Maybe I was behind the camera. Maybe someone would be holding out a hand for me in the next photo. But I was nowhere. I had not been invited. I had not been thought of. I had been erased. I looked up. Maribel wasn't watching me. She was looking out the window like she couldn't bear to see what this moment was doing to me. They sent you the wrong date on purpose, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I told them it was cruel. I told them it wasn't right. My throat tightened. I didn't ask her how she knew. I didn't want to know how many conversations they'd had about keeping me out. I tried to stop it, she added. I called your mother. I told Griffin he'd regret it. But She trailed off. You went, I said, not as a question. Just fact. She nodded, her face crumbling. I did. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the album. I just stared at the last page, one final photo of the whole family on the steps of the cottage at Isle of Palms. Everyone looking relaxed, sun-kissed, happy. I wasn't even a shadow. I just wanted to be there, I said, like I was still trying to justify my existence to a ghost jury. I didn't want anything from them. Maribel sat across from me, eyes wet. I know. I pushed the album away, gently stood and straightened my jacket. I need to hear it from them. Blaze, please, she said, reaching for my arm. Let it go. Don't give them the power to break you again. I pulled my arm away carefully. They already did. I walked out without the album. I didn't need it. I carried everything I needed now inside me. By the time I hit the highway, the sky was the color of ash and molasses. Long, dark roads stretched ahead, lit only by my headlights and the knowledge that just a few miles down was a cottage where they had laughed and posed and toasted while I was checking into a hotel room for a wedding that didn't exist. I pulled into the familiar gravel driveway just as the porch light flicked on. Griffin's car was parked sideways like he was too busy to park straight. From inside, I could hear the soft flutter of pages being turned and laughter. My family's laughter. I stepped onto the porch, hand reaching for the doorknob, and paused. It was time. The door wasn't locked. I stepped inside and the laughter stopped instantly, like someone had hit mute on a sitcom. They were all there in the living room, my mother Elaine on the couch, wine glass in hand. My father Howard next to her, mid-laugh. Griffin on the rug flipping through photos. Harper sitting on the armrest, her phone glowing in her hand. No one said anything right away. My presence didn't register as shock. It registered as inconvenience. I walked in slow, controlled. Like if I moved too fast, I'd splinter. I know, I said simply. Griffin looked up, raising one brow like I'd walked into the wrong house. Know what? That the wedding was last week. That I was never invited. A beat of silence. Then a chuckle. From Griffin. Followed by another from my mother, dry and dismissive. My father cleared his throat and looked down. Griffin tossed a photo onto the table and said with a smirk, "Didn't we tell you?" The room tilted. My chest tightened. "No," I said. "You didn't." My mother leaned back, wine sloshing. "We just didn't want any drama, Blaze. You always make things so heavy." "I make things heavy," Griffin shrugged. We wanted the day to be peaceful, simple, just joyful. You don't exactly bring that vibe. You didn't think I could behave at my own brother's wedding. You've never really fit, my mother said, like it was a medical diagnosis. I turned to my father. You let them do this. He looked up at me, eyes foggy. It wasn't my call. Of course it wasn't. I turned to Harper. She hadn't said a word. She met my eyes for a second, then looked away. On her phone I caught a glimpse, photo album updated. Griffin and Harper's wedding. A notification from a shared cloud folder, one I hadn't been added to. You made sure I'd never show, I said. You edited the RSVP site, changed the dates. You made it look like I'd just missed it. Griffin didn't deny it. We had to change plans. It wasn't personal. That's exactly what it was. My mother sighed, tired. You were always too sensitive, too needy. I nodded slowly. Right. Wanting to be treated like family. That's too much. Nobody said anything. For once, the room felt like it was suffocating them, not me. I looked around, memorizing the moment, their faces, their exact words, because this time I wouldn't forget, I wouldn't forgive, and I wouldn't let it happen again. I stepped back toward the door. No scene tonight, Griffin teased. No, I don't do scenes anymore. Then what do you do? My mother asked, sarcasm in every syllable. I take notes, I said. I left. Quietly. Deliberately. Outside, the ocean sounded like it was breathing with me, long, slow, and tired. Halfway back to the highway, I pulled into a diner, the kind that only serves 3 kinds of pie and burnt coffee. I called Maribel. She picked up on the second ring. They laughed, I said. They really laughed. She didn't answer for a moment. I didn't need her to. Sitting there across from a plate I hadn't touched, I stared at the water glass in front of me and let my mind go quiet. Then one clear, sharp thought rose to the surface. Maybe the only way to stop being the forgotten son was to stop being the silent one. And for once in my life, I would not clean up their mess. I would start with everything I was holding in place for them and let go. I didn't cry when I got home. I didn't smash anything or scream into a pillow or fall apart in some movie scene breakdown. I just sat on my couch, kicked off my shoes, and opened my laptop. That was my reaction, because I'd spent too many years doing nothing, too many years letting things go, giving them the benefit of the doubt, smiling through holidays where I was invisible, paying for things quietly, thinking maybe if I didn't make waves, they'd let me belong. I clicked into my inbox and typed 2 words into the search bar, Griffin wedding. Emails came up, a dozen threads. I opened each one slowly. None of them had actual details, just vague placeholders. Griffin's save the date was an evite that didn't even include Harper's name on the subject line. The official invite had the wrong date. I checked the timestamp. They'd sent it 4 months ago. I created a new folder on my desktop and labeled it in all caps for when they act confused. Then I opened my LLC banking portal. The ledger loaded like a confession: HVAC installment, wood panel replacements, stormproofing, leak inspection, roofing updates. All paid by me. Every time they said thank you, I said no need. Every time they brushed it off, I let them. There was a time I thought that was love. That maybe doing all that invisibly meant I was useful. That usefulness would earn me a place. Turns out they liked the invisible part best. I picked up my phone and called Dale Haskins, our longtime contractor. He answered on the 3rd ring, chewing something. Hey, Blaze, everything okay with the cottage? I just had a quick question about the payment trail, I said. Have you ever received anything directly from my family? A pause. You mean Elaine or Griffin? Yeah, not a dime. It all comes through your LLC, same as always. I just bill that and get my direct deposit. Simple and clean. Got it, I said and wrote it down. That was the thing, simple and clean for them. For me, it was years of maintenance, of logistics, of paying property tax I didn't technically owe because the house was still in their name, or so I thought. Until Tessa Kwan looked up from the documents and tilted her head. This is interesting, she said. I was sitting in her office in Charlotte, a legal pad in my lap, hands clasped tighter than I realized. What's interesting, I asked. Well, she said, turning the screen toward me, it looks like you signed a joint lien release and loan guarantee 10 years ago. That makes you a co-owner in some capacity. And the deed's last amendment lists a trust that, from what I can see, places significant rights in your hands. I blinked. I thought I just signed some paperwork to help them restructure the mortgage, I said. Mom handed me a stack when they were behind after Dad lost his job. I didn't even read it that closely. Well, Tessa said you might have bought yourself more than you knew. I leaned back. I wasn't just their ATM, I was the legal thread holding the cottage together. The house they laughed in, married in, excluded me from. I wasn't just footing the bills. I had rights to it. Tessa watched me quietly for a moment. Then, what do you want to do? I didn't speak. Just reached for my phone and pulled up my banking app. And in 3 taps, I canceled all automatic payments tied to the cottage. Roofing, landscaping, pest control, water filtration, everything. No announcement, no explanation. Let them feel it the way I felt that album. Sudden, icy, final. They noticed fast. 3 days after I stopped the payments, Dale called. Hey man, weird thing, materials didn't get delivered this week. Supplier says invoices bounced. Yeah, I said. That's intentional. A pause. Should I talk to your mom or... No. All communication goes through my attorney now. I'll email you the contact. I hung up and waited. The family always calls when the silence costs them money. And right on cue, the first call came from my mother. Blaze, she started tone sweet and strangled. Honey, Dale said something about payments not going through. Was there a mistake? No, I said. Well, what's going on? I didn't reply. The next message was sharper. This is unacceptable. Your brother just got married. We're trying to get the house in order. You can't just vanish. Then came Griffin. Messed up move, man. You're hurting Mom and Dad, you know that. You're doing this over a date mix-up. A date mix-up. That's what they called it. The same people who'd printed menus with custom calligraphy, who'd hired a photographer for the entire week of events, who'd made sure every chair was engraved with initials except mine. I ignored the calls. Then they escalated. An uncle I hadn't seen in years rang me up and said, Blaze, come on. Family is messy, don't make it worse. They're old. You don't want to have regrets? A former teacher messaged me. Your mom mentioned you're going through a phase. Be kind. Life's short. I stared at the screen, breath steady. They were building a wall of pressure, dragging people into it, playing the same game they always played, paint me as difficult, cold, unstable. Then it got local. Janet, the concierge at my condo, flagged me on a Tuesday morning. Mr. Callahan, she said quietly. There were 2 guests here asking about you, a woman and a man. They didn't give names, but they tried to get past the front desk. I told them to leave. Did they say what they wanted? No. Just said they were family. Of course they did. I thanked her and walked back to my unit with my chest burning. I wasn't angry. I was calculating. The next day, Tessa and I sat down and initiated the paperwork. Cease and desist letter, contact limitations, evidence logging. If they escalate again, she said, we'll file for a protective order. I nodded. Then came the 1-month mark. Exactly 4 weeks since I stood in that cottage, since they laughed in my face. I was at my desk when the call came. It was my mom. No greeting. Do you realize what you've done? She snapped. The roofers stopped. The electricians left. The living room is half torn up. The house is a mess. I waited. We can't live like this, she screamed. And I said it calm and even. Didn't I tell you? Silence, excuse me. You said it first, remember, at the cottage. When I found out about the wedding. You laughed and said, didn't we tell you, so I figured I'd return the favor. Blay. If there's anything else, I cut and talked to my lawyer. Then I hung up. 2 hours later, Tessa called. Just got the full title documents. The cottage is almost entirely yours, Blaze. It's not just the payments. You're the legal majority owner. I exhaled through my nose. They weren't just calling me to restart the payments. They were living in a house they thought they owned. A house I could lock them out of. Tessa's voice sharpened. You want to stop here? Or take it all the way? I stared out the window. I knew my answer. The morning I drove down to Isle of Palms, the sky was sharp and colorless, the kind of winter light that exposes every rough edge. I wasn't anxious. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't replaying their laughter in that cottage the way I had for nights. Something had settled inside me, something almost quiet. I was past wanting understanding, past wanting closure. What I wanted now was simple an ending that belonged to me. Before leaving Charlotte, I met with Tessa and another attorney she brought in, Miles Ortega. We sat in a conference room surrounded by documents, deeds, amendments, lien releases, trust agreements, signatures in my own handwriting I barely remembered signing 10 years ago. Tessa slid the final packet across the table. "This confirms it," she said. "You hold controlling ownership. Not partial, not technical, controlling." I stared at the paper at my own name stamped across what used to be a family property. "And eviction?" I asked. "You're legally entitled to recover the property," Miles said. "Given the circumstances, we'll have a sheriff present. It prevents escalation and prevents them from rewriting the story later." That line struck deeper than he knew. Rewriting the story was their specialty. By noon, the process server had the documents ready. Sheriff Larkin from Charleston County confirmed he'd meet us at the cottage. Everything moved with a cold, precise efficiency, nothing like the chaos of my family's emotional storms. I wasn't stepping into a fight anymore. I was stepping into procedure. On the drive down, my phone buzzed with an email from Dale. The subject line read, "Change order clarification." I opened it at a red light. Inside, the details were worse than I expected. A week before the wedding, my mother had approved a massive renovation expansion, a luxury kitchen redesign, exterior siding upgrade, and a deck extension without any payment authorization. The cost was enormous. "Tessa," I said into my Bluetooth, they were planning a remodel behind my back. She read the attachment silently. Then, "This looks like preparation for something bigger. Possibly a refinance. Maybe even prepping the property for sale. Whatever it was, they intended to use your asset without your consent." That landed like a stone in my chest. They weren't just excluding me socially. They were building financial plans on a property they believed they owned. A false belief I had silently enabled. No wonder they didn't want me anywhere near the wedding. No wonder the dates were manipulated. No wonder the RSVP page kept shifting. My presence anywhere was a risk to their plans. When we reached Isle of Palms, the wind was sharp and salty waves slamming the shore in steady, rhythmic hits. Sheriff Larkin waited by his cruiser. Miles carried the documents. I stood behind them, not hiding, just letting the process speak instead of my voice. Howard opened the door. The moment he saw the sheriff, his face drained in a way I'd never seen. Elaine appeared behind him, still clutching a dish towel like she'd been cooking, though the kitchen smelled of nothing. "What is this?" she barked before anyone spoke. Miles stepped forward. "Mrs. Kerrigan, Mr. Kerrigan, this is a formal notice to vacate the property. Effective today, you have 30 days to remove all personal belongings. All future communication must go through counsel." Elaine's face contorted. "This is insane. This is our home." I didn't raise my voice. "No," I said. "It's mine." She laughed, a brittle, frantic sound. You've never lived here. You never wanted it. I paid for every repair, every storm fix, every inspection, every structural update. You lived here because I allowed it. That allowance is over. You can't do this," she snapped. "We have things pending. The bank." She stopped. Too late. Miles lifted a brow. The bank pending in what way? Elaine tried to recover, but panic made her clumsy. We were exploring options. Just possibilities. That's all. But we all knew she'd said too much. They hadn't just excluded me from a wedding. They had planned to leverage a property they did not own to fund their future. A future without me in it. Griffin barreled into the room next, breathless. What the hell is going on? Sheriff Larkin nodded politely. "Sir, please stay back. This is official service of notice." Griffin looked at me, eyes narrowed like I had betrayed him, not the other way around. "Blaze, step outside." "Now." "No," I said calmly. "Come on, man. he pushed, lowering his voice. We're brothers. We can talk without all this. He gestured around the room as if the sheriff and the lawyers were props I'd brought to embarrass him. I didn't move. When you laughed at me that night and said, "Didn't we tell you?" That was the last time we talked privately. Everything since then has required witnesses. He clenched his jaw. You're blowing this out of proportion. You're punishing Mom and Dad because you're hurt. I'm not punishing anyone, I said. I'm ending a pattern. That's when Harper stepped into view. She looked different. Not angry, not defensive, just confused. Griffin, she asked quietly, what's going on with the house? Why didn't you tell me anything about this? Why did you tell everyone you'd given Blaze all the details about the wedding? Griffin tensed. Harper, not now. She didn't push further, but the crack in her expression said enough. She wasn't aligned with him. Not anymore. Howard finally stepped forward, eyes red. He wasn't angry, he was scared. Please, he said softly. We just need more time. I swallowed hard. There was a time when that broken tone would have undone me, when I would have paid anything to stop that look from crossing his face. But the truth settled over me like armor. I've given time, I said. Years of it. And you never saw it as a gift because I never said no. The sheriff confirmed the notice had been delivered. Miles handed them the packet. I stepped back, letting the silence end the moment. As I walked down the steps, I heard Elaine call after me, anger, grief, disbelief tangled in her voice. But she wasn't calling for understanding. She was calling because the life she'd built on my silence was collapsing. That wasn't my burden anymore. The drive back to Charlotte felt lighter than the drive down, even with my phone vibrating nonstop. By the time I parked at my condo, Tessa had emailed me a full timeline for the proceedings, key dates, expectations, and the steps for securing the property after vacancy. And then another message lit up the screen. From Elaine. Short. Venomous. You'll pay for this. We'll make sure everyone knows who you really are. I didn't even open it fully. I forwarded it to Tessa. Then I closed my phone and whispered to myself, I'm not taking back the house. I'm taking back my self-respect. And for the first time in months, I slept through the night. The 30 days passed quietly, too quietly. No calls, no threats, no guilt-drenched speeches about family. Silence wasn't something I trusted from them, but it didn't matter now. The clock was ticking whether they used their voices or not. On the morning the deadline expired, I received an email from Miles with photos of the cottage. The place looked emptier, smaller. They had taken most of their belongings, though not all. People rarely pack cleanly when they're leaving something they assumed they'd never have to leave. Keys left on the counter, his message read, property vacated. 2 hours later, I signed the order to change the locks and officially reclaim possession. It was surreal. Quiet. Almost ceremonial. No victory parade. No moment of triumph. Just a signature and a click of a door handle turning in a lock that now belonged only to me. I spent the afternoon sorting through the financial records Tessa uncovered. Buried in the paperwork were 2 applications Elaine had submitted, one for refinancing, one for a home equity line, both assuming ownership she did not have. One had even moved to pre-approval before stalling due to missing documents. So that was the urgency. Not the roof, not the living room, not the mold in the back closet. They weren't afraid of losing shelter. They were afraid of losing leverage. The cottage had never been a home to them. It had been an asset, and assets to them were tools. Tools they believed they had the right to use, including me. By evening, I got a text from Janet downstairs. Your parents are here again. Do you want me to send them away? I hesitated before replying. No, I'll come down. I found them seated on a bench in the marble lobby, smaller than I remembered them. Howard looked tired, older. Elaine looked cracked. Her posture wasn't sharp anymore. Her hands were shaking. Blaze, she said, standing quickly. Please, we just need a moment. I stayed where I was. We're in trouble, she said. The rent is too much. The car broke down. And Griffin, he's going through things. He's not helping right now. I waited. Not unkindly, not cruelly, just present. Elaine softened her voice the way she used to when she wanted something. You were always the good one, the responsible one. Please, just help us get back on our feet. Howard stared at the floor, voice hoarse. I'm sorry, son. Truly. I know I wasn't there for you. Their words were different, but the expectation underneath was the same. Save us. Carry us. Disappear again so we don't have to face who we are. I shook my head gently. I can't help you. Elaine's face twisted. You're abandoning your own parents. No, I said quietly. I'm finally not abandoning myself. Howard looked up, eyes wet. Just one night, Blaze. We have nowhere else. It broke something in me to say it, but I said it anyway. No. I stepped into the elevator. Elaine reached out as if she could catch the doors with her hands. They closed. And that was that. When I look back now, the sharpest part isn't the wedding photos or the laughter. It's realizing how long I trained myself to accept being invisible, and how easy it is for peace to be built on one person swallowing everything. We don't say that to blame anyone. We say it because it's human. Families are complicated, people are messy, and sometimes love gets confused with access. What I learned is this kindness without boundaries doesn't stay kind for long, it turns into quiet self-erasure. And none of us are meant to disappear just to keep the room comfortable. If this story stirred something in you, maybe a memory, maybe a lump in your throat, know that you're not alone in it. This little space we're building is for people who've carried things quietly, for people who are learning how to choose themselves without losing their heart, and for anyone who just needs to be heard without being judged. If you'd like, you can subscribe not as a click, but as a way of pulling up a chair with us. And if you feel ready, leave a few lines in the comments. Just a hi or where you're listening from, or the part that hit you the hardest. No pressure. I read more than you think. Thank you for sitting with me. Take care of yourself tonight, and I'll see you in the next story.